good work she does in the state of Nevada. Madam President, I start by asking unanimous consent that Artie Iyer, a legislative fellow in my office, Ben Ashman, another legislative fellow in my office, and Danny Carlson, who's joining us today on the floor from my office, all be granted floor privileges for the remainder of the 117th Congress.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Everything we're doing to lead our country to build back better from this pandemic is about putting workers at the center of our economy. It's about raising wages, bringing down costs. We know what's happened in this country in the last decade. We've seen profits go up. We've seen the stock market go skyward. We've seen executive compensation explode upward, yet wages in Nevada and Ohio and all over this country have essentially been flat. That's why Build Back Better is about raising wages and bringing down costs. We know what's wrong with our country. It's really, I said 20 years, it's been 30 years, 40 years where productivity has gone up. Workers are earning more and more for their companies and for their bosses, but they simply aren't sharing in the wealth that they've created. They've simply seen their wages flat. It's gotten more and more expensive for families to raise a family and build a middle-class life. Healthcare, childcare, prescription drugs, higher education, housing that the presiding officer and I have worked on in the Banking and Housing Committee. Costs have doubled and tripled and quadrupled since people my age were trying to go to school and start a family. Meanwhile, people's hard work isn't paying off. I remember in our Banking and Housing Committee, we did a hearing, more of a listening session. It was one where senators were not asking questions. It was just listening to people, which we probably should do more often. And one woman, it was called a Dignity of Work listening session, and one woman from southern West Virginia, and who'd struggled her whole life and clearly was working hard, and she said, you know, the words working and poor should not be in the same sentence. Think about that. She's worked hard all her life. She's making 13, or shouldn't, you know, she didn't go to Harvard. She didn't go to Ohio State. She worked all her life. She worked to raise kids. She's still making $12, $13, $14 an hour. And that, Madam President, as costs only ever seem to go up, even middle-class families don't feel stable. And that was before the pandemic. We know that in this country, before the pandemic, a quarter of people who rent, a quarter of them paid more than half their income in housing, in rent. That means one thing happens in their lives. Their car breaks down, their child gets sick, has to stay home from school. They maybe have a minor workplace injury and miss a week of work. Everything can go wrong. Their lives can go upside down, turn upside down because they can be evicted. And then what happens? We know then the pandemic has expanded, has upended the global economy. Supply chains are struggling. People feel their budget squeezed. They're anxious about whether prices that have gone up will ever go back down. We've heard a lot of politicians, particularly in this body, try to stoke families' anxieties for their own political gain, but they don't offer solutions. Their only answer is, let's take power away from workers. They think the only way to keep prices low is to keep wages even lower. That's the false choice. We work on real solutions to bring down the biggest cost Americans face for the long term and to help families keep up with the cost of living. Housing, childcare, healthcare, three of the biggest items in any family's budget. Build Back Better tackles all of them. On our Banking and Housing Committee, everything we're doing is about making housing more affordable. Whether you pay a mortgage or whether you pay rent, housing is just way too expensive and not available to enough people, plain and simple. We need to build more homes people can afford. We need to make the houses and the townhouses and the apartments we already have more affordable. And we need to make it affordable to buy a home. I visit communities in Ohio all the time with houses that look affordable. They're listed maybe even $50,000, $75,000, but families can't come up with a down payment, or sometimes they can't find lenders to make the loans. Sometimes we see these lower cost properties snapped up by private equity, by investors paying cash. We're working to fix that with plans like targeted down payment assistance, expanding access to lower cost mortgages. Look at healthcare for a moment. Monthly premiums, deductibles, prescription drug prices still eat away at people's budgets. In the American Rescue Plan, we strengthened the Affordable Care Act to make ACA insurance plans more affordable. Customers are saving an average of 40% on their monthly premiums on ACA's plans because of the American Rescue Plan which we passed in March. We'll make sure those cost savings continue so Americans can save on their coverage. We'll make it more affordable for seniors and Americans with disability to get the care they need at home from a workforce that actually makes a living wage. I was with a number of home care workers in Cleveland the other day. These are people who take care of people we love. They take care of aging parents. They take care of a worker injured on the job. They take care of families. They make $11, $12, $13 an hour. Some of them have been doing this for 20 years. They still don't make a living wage. As I said earlier, as the lady from West Virginia said, the words working and poor should not be in the same sentence. And we know, Madam President, how powerful the big pharma lobby is. For years, decades, many of us have fought to allow Medicare to negotiate prices with drug companies, just like private insurance companies and the Veterans Administration do. I used to, as a member of Congress, I used to take bus loads to Canada, about 3 hours away, so that seniors could buy prescription drugs in Windsor, Ontario, because it cost half as much. Same brand name, same dosage, same packaging, but the Canadian government negotiates prices directly with the drug companies. The American government doesn't. Why? Well, you know why. Look down the hall. Down the hall in Mitch McConnell's office, the Republican leader of this House, the leader of the Senate for many years. Look at the lobbyists from the drug companies that line up outside his office, always telling people, no, we're going to do whatever the drug companies want. We know that the entire minority, the entire Republican Party here is in the pockets of the drug companies. We know that. The problem is we've got to get all 50 Democrats to stand up and say, no, we're going to negotiate. We're going to stand with Medicare beneficiaries. We're going to stand with people who need prescription drugs of all ages, and we're going to negotiate on their behalf directly with the drug companies, cutting the price. We do that with the VA. The VA pays whether it's in Reno or Cleveland, whether it's in Las Vegas or Columbus, the VA pays significantly less for prescription drugs than to the rest of us. In this bill, we're finally standing up to the drug companies. We're going to start bringing down seniors' prescription costs. For the first time ever, we're empowering Medicaid to negotiate directly. It's going to make a difference for seniors, a huge difference for seniors living on fixed incomes. Of course, we know for young families, they face generally different costs. The children of working parents often get their health insurance through Medicaid or through CHIP. But right now, if a mom takes on an extra shift or if dad gets a bonus for a job well done, that tiny change, that small change in their monthly income could cause their kids to lose their insurance for the month. What kind of policy is that? So dad works really hard, he's really good at his job, he got a raise. Mom wants to work an extra shift, so she brings a little more money home, and then we take the benefit away. So we're saying to them, yeah, we believe in working hard, we believe in family values, but if you work too hard and you make too much money, we're going to take away the benefit. That kind of policy is just stupid. It's why we're including my legislation that will keep kids insured all year. It means parents won't have to worry they'll get hit with a huge medical bill if their child gets sick the same month they work some extra hours. And of course, the biggest cost for so many families is child care. The Build Back Better plan will ensure that middle-class families pay no more than 7% of their income on child care. What a relief that's going to be. Again, the point of this bill is job creation. Build Back Better is job creation, is the biggest tax cut in American history for families with children, and is to bring costs down. And one of the most oppressive, most burdensome, most difficult costs for families is child care. Family with one toddler, two parents earn $50,000 a year. Our plan will save them $5,000. $5,000 on child care costs. Some families will save up to $6,500. Think what that means. On top of this, as I said, is the biggest tax cut for working families in American history. In my state, in Nevada, the presiding officer's state, where Senator Cortez Masto represents, is not much different from the rest of the country. More than 90% of families in Ohio, 90% of families in Ohio who have children under 18 will at a minimum get a $3,000 tax cut. At a minimum, $3,000 a year. And that's a real tax cut. That's not like a deduction. That's real dollars in their pocket. Think about that. 90% of families in this country, in my state, it's families with 2.2 million children. That many kids, that many families will get will get at least a $3,000 tax cut. If they have 3 children, they'll get $8,000 or $9,000 tax cut in a course of a year. And that's one of the most important parts of this bill. It'll help them keep up with the cost of diapers and childcare and clothes and all the other extra expenses. And one of the joys of this job, Madam President, is going online, watching. We have on our website, we have Tell Your Story about what the biggest tax cut in American history for working families. Tell us what that means to you. One woman wrote in and said, first time in my life, I can send my son to summer camp for a week. A man wrote in Cincinnati, first time ever, I can finally now afford fast pitch softball equipment for my daughter. Others said, now I can put aside $100 a month for my child to go to Eastern Gateway or Stark State or North Central Ohio Technical Community College. Others have said, and this is the one we hear the most, Madam President, you've heard so many families talk about the last week of the month. And for people around here that make more money than this, you don't think of it much, but the last week of the month, so many families face the anxiety of how do I put together enough money to pay my rent this month? Well, the child tax credit has relieved that anxiety for millions of families because they get that $300 or that $250, or maybe 2 children, they get $600 in the 15th of the month that can ease them into paying rent, making their rent that time. But it comes down to whose side are you on? It comes down to Mitch McConnell and the lobbyists in his office and the politicians who always do his bidding, pass their tax cut for the wealthy and for corporations that outsource jobs. And you know that. 4 years ago, biggest tax cut, the 70% of that tax cut went to the wealthiest 1% of people. Contrast that with our tax cut, where 90% of Ohio families get at least a $3,000 a year tax cut. It's pretty simple. Do you want tax cut for billionaires? Then vote against this bill. Or do you want tax cuts for working families? That's why you support Build Back Better. You want tax cut for drug companies, or you want to bring down the prescription drug prices? Do you want tax cuts for big banks that won't give your family a mortgage? Or do you want to bring down the cost of housing? When you love this country, you fight for the people who make it work. You fight for their jobs. You fight for their higher wages. You fight to bring down the cost of living. That's what we are doing. I yield the floor, Madam President, to my colleague. Thank you.